So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this drawing off here. So I'll just go ahead and kind of use, these planes as a guide to where I'm going to draw. I'm going to shade this just so you can see how I've kind of shaded this. So, some parts are going to be darker based on how, and I'm just kind of using this sort of three-dimensional lighting model, three-quarter view, where I'm projecting light this way. So the dark side is going to be on this side of the face here, and then I can kind of look at the lips. So this, looking at this as far as how the planes work is, the parts of the flatter parts that are turned away from the light are going to be darker, and the parts that turn towards it are going to be lighter. So, and then there'll be cast shadows too in between those objects. So, when I define these planes, I'm just kind of looking at where the positive, negative sort of areas of lighting are happening, right? So shadow, light, and I can kind of go in and try to finish this drawing up here by, just finishing out all the details here. The eyelids, and these are also, planes, right? So the eyelids you can look at it as a plane, a setup of planes, sort of the way I did the head here. It's definitely rounded, and but it's helping me to understand better how to simply define the light. So it's a simplification of how the light hits this object, and so then we're going to have sort of other lighting that happens here. So if it's very dramatic, if the light is kind of more striking this straight down, we can kind of look at that and say, hey, this is the really dark areas over here. There's some sort of middle light things happening over here, and I could kind of redefine some of these areas a bit too with my drawing. And if you look at I could kind of define this shape here as far as the nose bridge goes. It sort of has these planes that go in and out as I define them. And, without working from a model, it's hard to say, exactly, what proportions everything is. This is sort of, again, generic proportions of a head that we're doing. There's certain things about a female figure, female portrait versus a male portrait that are going to be different. Definitely more subtle chins. The noses are a little bit different. Softer expressions, things like that. But again, everything varies from person to person. So it could be a combination of those things that we're drawing. And, with animation, we're stylizing a lot, right? We're trying to do appeal. We're trying to do stylization that kind of fits, the proportions, but is taken to a different level, right? It's not really real. It's more like we're expressing it as a cartoon. Whereas with real life drawing, we're trying to capture what we see, right? In this case, since it's a generic drawing or a generic head, we're not necessarily capturing what we're seeing, but we're defining all the areas that we're going to do when we're observing, when we're actually observing a real life figure. We are aware of those proportions, and then we're aware of the variant of those proportions too, right? So all those things vary from person to person, but they fit within a certain realm of proportions. So they're going to be very similar from person to person, but with enough variation to give you character from person to person. So let's look at now we're going to do the side view. So remember what we can project those proportions over when we're doing the different views here. So let's just do like the side view now. And so there's certain things here that we can carry over here, right? So we know that the height of the head, we're going to try and keep this in proportion. So, when we're doing animation, things like that, it's really important that we carry those proportions over from one drawing to the next. Most of the time we're tracing them, but even with tracing, there's some, three-dimensional moves that happen, right? So when those three-dimensional moves happen, we want to beware of, the different things that happen to the head. So, and we want to, you do want to draw the neck here. I didn't really draw it here yet, but we're going to draw the neck on the side view here. So that's another, remember, if we just break this down into simple shapes, we're looking at like something like that, right? So we have the same kind of proportions that we're going to carry over, for all the center lines, things like that. And then we're going to use those to draw the ear, right? So we drew the ear and the mouth Right? We have the mouth proportions. We have, the neck here. The ear is going to come between here and here. Right? So you want to carry those proportions over, and you can do that by just kind of projecting these lines over, right? And keeping everything in the same realm, right? So, remember eye sockets, things like that, they're going to be darker because the light is inside, and we want to look at that same invisible mask that we're going to carry over here to the side view. So let's look at the portrait side here, and we can kind of look at, how the mouth works, right? So there's a mouth, the nose, and then the eyebrows. So they have some three-dimensional aspects to it that we could see in the portrait, right? So we're going to kind of define those. And then we can kind of look at that planar breakdown too. So like how does that look on the side, right? So there's this plane that kind of comes up here because we have our temples here, right? So remember we have those temples that we did in the 2D drawing. And here we're going to do them, more like a plane, right? So we're going to think of that more as a flat plane area. And this is a stylization too of how it actually is, because we don't really have flat areas on the head, but we're kind of defining them here just for simplification so that we can get a better idea of how to draw the things. So let's look at that, that invisible mask too that happens here. We have the eyebrows here, so everything inside of here kind of falls in a different lighting model, right? So everything kind of pushes in here, and then the eye sort of comes out again, right? So you can look at those proportions, drawing the eye, drawing the nose and the side here, and so I'm breaking these down into flatter shapes, right? So this is like a triangle or something, and the tip of the nose. So before we drew it as a circle, I'm just kind of drawing it flat here, but you can always go back and round this up when you want to finalize this drawing up. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the lips here and draw the side. And so, here we can do the chin, So I'm just kind of defining the chin as a flatter area too, and extending this area here at the whole mouth. This is what an area too that we can define in colors, right? We have sort of these cool and hot or warm zones, cold and warm zones, we call them in the face when we get into painting. But all those can be divided up here so that we can draw the face a little differently. So here we have the cheekbones. So again, that's kind of a shape like that. And then we'll finish out this here. We got the ear. So here now we have enough information to kind of have all the proportions drawn out to where we can now draw, kind of clean this up and do all the details that we need to do a drawing, right? So now we have, once you identify all those proportions, then it's a lot easier to do your final drawing and get things accurate, right? You want to get things accurate as easily as possible. So if you can get those accuracies together in, by defining, that's the point of these exercises. We're just trying to define areas. It's not even so much like trying to do a final drawing or anything, but more or less like setting up the proportions for a drawing. So you notice here I did a little bit of things different here. I had the head a little bit tilted up, and that's fine. We're kind of doing a slightly, if you look at this, I'm kind of have a different angle here for the head, and this is a little bit more close up. So let's go on to the third view, which is going to be the three-quarter view.